Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Rolka. Thank you for checking out my video. This is questions from comments 33, one of my favorite segments that I do here on the channel. Don't mind the microphone in front of me. I'm going through a little bit of a phase here. I normally wear the lavalier mic because I just like to have an open field and I want that connection with you. But I really like this microphone. I think it really sounds quite nice, and I think it favors my voice quite nicely. And I've been using it lately in a lot of my other sorts of stuff with teaching and stuff like that. So I'm using it today for questions from comments 33. Lots of great questions. I'm going to dive right in. I wanted to ask your advice. While listening to my recordings and generally listening to my singing, I noticed that I don't have lightness in my voice, as if all vocals go through tension. There is no natural vibrato either. I only do it artificially. Are there any exercise tips for making the sound fly easy? And by artificially, I assume that what you're meaning by that is emphasizing the sort of pitch fluctuation of it, like a ee kind of a thing, which isn't really vibrato. Or even kind of stopping and starting the airflow. What you're talking about is vocal fold balance. And it's interesting, vibrato comes up a lot in the questions. I didn't choose them this way, but I've just got a lot of questions about vibrato, and we're going to talk about it a lot in all these questions today. What you're talking about is balance. Vibrato is this synergistic thing that happens between the vocal fold and the subglottic air pressure, the air column, your support, if you will. So when those two things are working together quite nicely, you get this synergistic interplay between the two, and it kind of, resonates and wobbles. Wobble's a bad term because that's a different term in vocal pedagogy. So we'll just say that it's synergistically kind of ebbing and flowing against itself, and that's vibrato. And once you get the feel for that, you can kind of encourage it a little bit more, or you can kind of pull back on it a little bit and decrease it a little bit. But make no mistake, the presence of a vibrato is an excellent example that your voice is working in a well-balanced capacity. You've got good subglottic air pressure or support, and you have good efficiency of vocal fold closure. It's not squeezing too hard, nor is it too loosely adducted. So how do you work on that? How do you get that to happen? In the case of the individual who asked that question, you want more lightness in your voice, work on some dynamic air pressure exercises. There are lots that are out there. He is a nice, really relaxing, fun way to work on maintaining your engagement, doing those short staccato articulations, looking for the balance in your voice. Now, it's quite likely that what you'll hear when you first start these is a lot of variety and intensity and adduction of the vocal fold, and it manifests itself in fairly predictable ways. If you are over gripping with your vocal folds, then you're going to get that kind of a sound. Now, that's an exaggeration, of course, so you might not sound quite that extreme, but that's really pressing the vocal fold together too hard. On the other side, you might get a very airy sound, where the vocal fold is just barely touching enough to create the pitch. Those two examples can certainly be useful from time to time in your repertoire, but they are not balanced. And those types of tones are not going to naturally result in a vibrato. Oops, wrong shoulder. There we go. That was the other reason why I wanted to use the mic on the stand, is I can wear my scarf and my favorite jumper too. So you want to work on balance, and the vibrato will emerge out of that practice. Start with those short dynamic air pressure exercises so that you can work on balance of engagement, subglottic air pressure, and vocal fold closure. Then move on to more sustained exercises where the task is, can you maintain that? So I think I often call those hybrid exercises, where you'll have some short staccato pitches followed by a melismatic scale. he, 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 he. And the goal there is to try to keep the physical experience the same. You feel the same kind of engagement on the vocal fold with the short pitches as you do with the sustained exercise. Great question. Thanks for asking that. Let's move on. I had a question about one of the exercises. Is my stomach supposed to contract inwards when doing the he short breaths, or should my stomach stay expanded the entire time? Thanks in advance. I need like a klaxon sound for when I'm going to give an answer that I'm reasonably certain is going to be really unpopular. Like I would be sounding the klaxon right now. I should have done like a search for that. Neither, I'm afraid. When you are doing that exercise, the goal is to maintain your lateral expansion and the persistence, the engagement throughout the core of your body, such that the stomach isn't really pushed all the way out, and nor is it getting sucked all the way back in, nor is it pulsing in this very obvious visual way. When you do that exercise, you will see a little bit of muscle engagement right around the solar plexus, right below the sternum where your ribs meet in your chest, like right below that point. You'll see a little bit of muscle activity, but it's not that much at all. And if you are sticking your stomach out on the inhalation, I would sound the klaxon again. That is not apagio breath management. That is often said to be a way to support your voice. I am sorry to say that you might get a little bit of engagement that way, but that isn't really the way it works. And that's don't take my word for it. That's not my development. That's a part of apagio breath management. And you can look up the likes of Richard Miller, or Shirley Emmons has a web page. If you do a Google search for Shirley Emmons, breathing for singing or breath management for singing, I think is the name of it. And you can read, she has a beautiful one-page synopsis on this. The sticking out of the stomach, I'm not sure where that came from, but there's a little bit of activity in that area of the body. The expansion primarily comes in the form of the lateral expansion of the rib cage. The muscles around the core of the body, like the rectus abdominis, the inner and outer oblique muscles, and the intercostal muscles, work together to lift and engage in a sort of persistent fashion such that we get a compression of the air column below the epiglottis, subglottic air pressure. I do hope that helps. Shameless plug, I did a whole course on apagio breath management and breathing for singing. It's on my new website, redone, I should say, jeffrolka.com. You might consider having a look over there, learning about the course a little bit. There's a form you can ask me a question about the course if you want more information about it, and see if it's a good fit for you to help you with this. But that neither one of those aspects, the way that you've asked them, is exactly what's right for that exercise. You want expansion laterally through the ribs, and you want a persistent engagement. You'll see a small amount of engagement around the solar plexus. Moving on. How can I get faster? I've been practicing singing for about 4 months now using your warmups, and there were some parts of this I struggled with, particularly the fast notes in the exercises near the end. Is there any way you can recommend to get better at these, or just to start slower and build up? Thanks. Well, first of all, you're welcome. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. You kind of answered your own question. How one might do that, however, might be helpful. There is, if you're using a desktop system, there's like a gear icon, and you can, in fact, slow the videos down. I think it says like 0.75 or 0.5 speeds for the video. So you can click that gear and slow it down so that you get the patterns and things like that. I've also done a few videos where I incrementally play the exercises faster and faster. There is a playlist on my channel called Fast and Slow. You can find those videos collected there. They're in the regular warm-up playlists as well, but they're nice. They're right there in that playlist too. Additionally, you might also consider using some of it, and they should really be called like fundamental technique or something like that, but the beginner videos, I often play those more slowly so that you can get the pattern. And while you may be a more experienced vocalist, if you're struggling with the pattern, you might try to find those patterns in the beginner videos. If it's a really like wide range pattern, you're not going to find it there. So the gear icon might be your best bet, but you could head over there, find the pattern, do it more slowly in that playlist, and then come back to your standard warm-up and take it from there. But yeah, I would suspect that if you are an intermediate to advanced vocalist and you're working on some of the wider range exercises or just some of the exercises that are at the ends of the warm-up videos that are oftentimes played more quickly, then using the gear would be the way to go. If these exercises are going over the registration events like the secondo passaggio, that is done quite intentionally, and oftentimes those exercises are better done quickly, even at the expense of the overall accuracy. The accuracy will come with time through greater facility across the registration event and greater overall release of the vocal mechanism. The fundamental premise here is that your concept of the pitch is in fact a more reliable way of finding that pitch and singing that pitch effectively than you trying to place it someplace. When you are in the upper range of your voice, any amount of trying to manipulate physically what you're doing is almost certainly going to cause you to go out of tune. So it's better to cultivate release, and that is done usually with faster exercises, and concept. Having a great mental concept for where you want the pitch to be and allowing the physicality to be done of its own accord by creating the system for it. So creating good engagement, good airflow, good subglottic air pressure, great release, and a great concept. That will be a better way to get those pitches to be accurately sung in tune. Moving on. Not hung up on classifications. I included this. This isn't so much a question as it is, in my opinion, a great way to think about all of this stuff. Hi, Jeff. I'd like some more baritenor stuff. It's coming. I've been working on my voice with your help for a couple of years now. Thank you for watching. Truly appreciate that. I started with the gentle baritone warm-up and just kept working it. My range has been increasing. Now I am carefully adding some of the tenor warm-ups. The baritenor range may describe me. Or maybe the medium voice. I bet that was like I might be or I'm maybe. Medium voice. I'm not too hung up about bass, baritone, baritenor, tenor classifications. The only real thing I can guarantee about my voice is that it's my voice, and I'm having fun developing it. By the way, I did subscribe, like, and Patreon you. I'd feel stingy if I hadn't. Well, thank you very, very much for that support. I really appreciate it, and truly, it's with the support of individuals like you that I can keep on serving the singing community in the way that I do. So thank you for that very, very much. And I want to congratulate you on cultivating an attitude which is in fact going to help you reveal your overall kind of singing characteristics more quickly than if you started with the concept of I am a fill in the blank, bass, baritone, baritenor, tenor, whatever. By focusing on the function of your voice, you will in time work through all of the registration event practice and vowel modifications and all those kinds of things, develop great facility. The registration event points will reveal themselves to you, and then you can look at a chart and say, oh, well, my voice behaves like this, so ergo I am this kind of a singer. In truth, unless you're singing classical music, it doesn't really matter. Those classifications were developed to help individuals and directors put everybody together. So you could say, oh, I'm a, tenor robusto, and the director would say, I need a tenor robusto, and then you would have opera part meeting vocalist. It is, however, nice to kind of know. So working towards that is a good thing to do if you're just wanting to increase the overall function of your voice and learn a bit about everything. And then at some point you can say, oh, I happen to fit this category. But remaining not hung up on the classifications is excellent. I encourage you to continue thinking that way, continue exploring your voice and enjoying it. And I hope that my work here on YouTube will continue to facilitate that, make it better and better for you, so you can enjoy your voice for as long as you should choose to do so. Hey, Jeff, another great warm-up. Just wondering what including the movements is doing to your or one's body or voice. Yeah, I released a couple of videos where I did some motion. Kind of want to do more of that in the future because it can be extremely helpful. Basically, telling someone to stop doing something is like that old don't think about the pink elephant in the room mental game, right? Like, don't think about a pink elephant. Just whatever you do, don't see the pink elephant in your mind. And most of the time, people will have some type of vision or idea or concept of a pink elephant. I'm doing it right now, it shouldn't be a surprise because I'm the one talking about it, right? But that's the thing. We have to do something other than what we are trying to avoid. We have to put something in its place. So if you sing with vocal tension, I can't, with any degree of efficacy, expect you to sing with release if all I do is sit here and say, you've got to stop being tense. Don't be tense. Stop tensing up. Stop that tension. That's ridiculous. It doesn't work like that. We have to do something else. And that's where motion comes in. You will notice that when I demonstrate vocalizations, or oftentimes in the videos, if I'm singing something, I kind of wag my head around. Yeah. That's me keeping my neck released. That's me doing something aside from gripping in order to stay released through my neck and my shoulders. I, like many people, carry tension that way. This is a way to circumvent that. Do I need to do that all the time? No, not really, but I've kind of come to like it, so I do it anyway. And it feels nice, and it means that I don't have much, if any, tension in my neck. Plus, when I do wear the scarf, I get to do the old scarf toss. So that's what those exercises were meant to do. Now, there is some research to suggest that cross-body motions work to unify the hemispheres of the brain. And when we sing, especially, or I should say, when we sing with lyrics, we are requiring both hemispheres of our brains to work together. One hemisphere is processing pitch and duration. The other hemisphere is processing the actual language, the words, and we need to put them together to sing with lyrics. So the motions in my videos where I've got cross body motion happening and things like that are exercises to suggest to the body to talk across or betwixt the two hemispheres. So the motions are meant to put some motion in your body so that your muscles can't grip, get all tensed up and freeze. So you're kind of keeping loose, and also to suggest some cross-hemisphere communication in the brain. Hello, Jeff. Greetings from Greece. Can you please address why someone will lose his vibrato on high notes when he has it in the low ones? How can he fix this? Or can one fix this? I myself have this problem. My range, I suspect, is that of a baritenor. Thanks. In advance, presumably, is what would have been gone there. But you know what? Your English is excellent, and that is much appreciated, because if this were in Greek, I would not be able to read it. So thank you for that. There's actually I'll pop up on screen here for a second. There's actually a word for that. And it is called straight tone intrusion. When muscular tension locks one particular laryngeal adjustment into place, the tone will tend to go somewhat straight, as occasionally happens if the quote-unquote support is too rigid. Absence of vibrato may also result from too little contact between the approximating vocal folds and the airflow. I took this from Richard Miller's work, The Structure of Singing. So what does that mean? I mean, that's the answer, but what does that actually mean? Well, how do we work around this? How do we keep the vibrato going? Well, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again here. It's about balance. When you are going from that low tone, you are going to that high tone, and your vibrato is ceasing, you are getting a straight tone intrusion because some adjustment in the system is not occurring. You are getting locked into one position with the engagement and the vocal fold. And when you make that ascent, the system is not flexible enough to allow different changes to occur so that the vibrato can be maintained. One of the ways that you can work around this is to reverse the phrase. So like, let's say you were singing from like that. Now those are two relatively easy pitches, but I'd suggest that you start there, whatever interval it is. So I don't know what the interval in the song, or if this is just in general for you, but you might start with a song that has an interval where this is occurring. You're losing your vibrato on the upper pitch. Take the interval and then reverse it. Sing the pitches in reverse and learn to find your vibrato on that upper pitch. When you've done that, notice the physical experience of it. Notice what it feels like. Notice the kind of energy that you're using to have vibrato on that pitch. And then reverse it again. So once you've practiced, then you have to remember what it felt to sing that B natural, in this case, with the nice tone and vibrato and intonation. And then reverse the interval so that you get the same kind of response when you ascend to it. So straight tone intrusion comes when you're not dynamic enough. The air column or the vocal folds, one of them is getting too locked up to be able to allow the vibrato to keep spinning when you do the interval. Reverse it, practice it, notice the physical experience of it. Try it again. Strengthen head voice. Just asking how to strengthen head voice. My head voice always breaks when sing higher. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, when we have cracks or breaks, things like that, it's an indication of an imbalance of some sort. Depending on how much it's cracking for you, it could be that the vocal folds are separating entirely and you're getting more of a falsetto tone production. That would sound something like this. Where it's really just, they're just coming apart. And there's nothing I can do about it at that point. They're separated. It's kind of hard to say because there's like any number of different ways that your voice can crack. But at the end of the day, it's an imbalance between the flow of air and the ability of the vocal fold to remain adducted. If you balance them out a little bit better, then the vocal fold can stay adducted or touching or closed if you like. Then you get a more consistent sound as you make the transition between your chest voice and your head voice. That may be what you're looking for in your repertoire. Whether it is to that degree or not kind of doesn't matter because that's the place to start anyway. You want to work towards that, and that will gain you greater overall control over what you might choose that isn't necessarily entirely adducted, but doesn't result in a falsetto tone production either. So if you want to be kind of more lighter, cricothyroid dominant, airier, not airy, but head voice, light, the beginning point for that is still where you're getting really efficient vocal fold adduction throughout the scale, and then you can adjust it as necessary for your stylistic considerations. I hope that helps. There's just so many different ways that one's voice can crack. It's hard for me to say exactly what could be happening for you. This is a bit of a deep dive, so I'm going to read it with probably a few interjections in there, but and then we'll go back and unpack it a little bit. Morning. I enjoyed the chat yesterday. I have a musical notation question. Pause to point out you did ask for questions. This is true. I always ask for questions. Love the questions. I think I understand the basic organization of tonal music. Using the keys on a piano, I find the octaves have the same named keys, the same intervals between them. They form the same chords, and so on. So, okay, I'm not going to read all this the way through. I'm going to show you as we kind of go. What they're talking about is that this is a G here, and this is a G here. This is a G here, and this is a G here. The names of the keys repeat octave by octave by octave. We've got 12 pitches. C, these are C's, C sharp or D flat, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, and then we repeat C, D flat, D, so on and so forth. And in sound, the G3 and the G4, for example, blend so well, it's hard to tell there are two individual sounds. Absolutely. Here's G3, here's G4. If I play them together, I mean, you can hear that there's two pitches being played, but they blend so very well together. Here's a little trick for you. This is the overtone series in action. I'm going to depress this key, but notice it hasn't been struck, so nothing is ringing. But if I play this note and then let it go, you're going to hear this pitch. That's the overtone. That's playing the note, and then I can activate that overtone just by lifting the damper off this key. It will also happen here. So here's this pitch so you can hear it. Let it ring out, lifting the damper. And that pitch is contained in this note too. It's fainter because it's a much higher overtone, doesn't have quite as much energy, but yeah. So yeah, they are all kind of contained within one another, but I'm getting off topic. They're not completely the same, as can easily be seen by asking a male singer to sing the exact same keys on the piano as the soprano. So are they the same pitch? Is pitch the name for frequency in musical sounds? Piano's same keys an octave apart have frequencies with a consistent mathematical relationship, but they do not have the same frequency. Absolutely right. Yet we speak of pitch collections without regard to the octave. And oh, you are so close there with that statement. Are they different notes? I was taught note combines frequency, pitch it was called, and duration, whole note, half note, etc. My confusion comes from the different ways some of the authors I'm reading use the terms pitch and note. Sometimes it changes in the same chapter. Just wondering what the musicians and teachers you know think about all this. And this is one of those really profound, somewhat philosophical questions that are so much fun to dive into. And when I gave it some thought, I realized that I in talking with other musicians, you assume a base level understanding of what you're talking about. But when you start to look into it, you kind of realize that we're all kind of using the language of music in a somewhat willy-nilly kind of way. So I'm very fond of using the new Harvard Dictionary of Music. It's hardly new any longer because I got it when I graduated from high school, which was a very, very long time ago. But anyways, the new Harvard Dictionary of Music on page 638 says pitch, the perceived quality of a sound that is chiefly a function of its fundamental frequency, the number of oscillations per second. So by that definition, pitch is a single entity. If I say C4, that is it. That is C4. There are no other questions about it. That's the pitch, and that's it. By that definition, pitch means that. However, on page 640, no, excuse me, not however. Here is what you nearly use. I think you used the term collections, but the actual term that one could use, though I have to admit I've never heard this used before, is pitch class. A pitch without reference to octave or register in which it occurs. Hence, for example, the class of all Cs as distinct from the pitch C. And that hash right there, honestly, I usually use the numbers. So C1, C2, C3, C4. The little comma after the C, I should have looked that up. I don't remember exactly which C that was. I think that's C3, and then C with two hashes is in fact C2. It kind of moves in opposite directions that way, but I might be wrong about that. At any rate, pitch class is kind of what you're talking about there and what you're observing in what you're reading. And I think the thing of it is that we often use those terms somewhat in conversation with the assumption that the context of the conversation we're having will then kind of make it clear what we mean by using the word pitch or saying we're talking about an A in the framework of the conversation that we're having. So, for example, if I'm talking about an F major chord and I say, yeah, it has an F, A, and C in it, I'm talking about it in terms of pitch class. Those F, A's, and C's on the piano could be anywhere. Way over there even too, right? Way out of the shot, I know. When I'm talking about spelling the F major chord. But if I'm talking about spelling an F major chord in the context of the song Hallelujah, for example, by Leonard Cohen, then I'm probably going to talk about it in a little bit of a different term. I am meaning something slightly different than purely just the spelling of the chord. And one might say, well, that's what the word arrangement is for. What you're now talking about, Jeff, is an arrangement. Yeah, that's true too. This happens a lot in music where we have terms that change function depending on the context. And I think that that is part of what's happening here. Additionally, when you are getting into more and more specifics around a given topic, like, for example, how you want to voice the chords in Hallelujah for your arrangement, you start to get increasingly specific language around it. So when you talk about a chord voicing, you're talking about the arrangement and the location of the pitches in a given chord. So, for example, that in that F major chord that I was just talking about, I could voice it like this in my song if I wanted to. I could also voice it like that. I might also want to open it up a little bit, and so maybe I voice it like this. It's all the same chord. has a certain different feel to it depending on how I voice it. All FAC, all members of that same pitch class, different pitches because I'm moving them around on the piano. In the context of comping chords, we might talk about that as a voicing or even an arrangement of those chords. There was one other word that was used in that question. It was the word note. A symbol used in musical notation to represent the duration of a sound and, when placed upon a staff, to indicate its pitch. More generally, especially in British usage, the pitch itself. I have to admit, I found that a bit confusing because once you get it on the staff, you then have duration and you have pitch per the definition that we just read. In other words, referring to a specific frequency. The grand staff, this kind of staff where you have a treble clef and a bass clef and they're connected with a line in the left margin, that is an indication of, unless otherwise marked, absolute values. The ledger line C that exists between those two staves, that's middle C. That's that pitch. So how in British usage it's more generally used that way, I didn't really understand. I would love to learn. So if someone understands the difference that I'm missing here, please let me know in the comments. That would be fantastic. But again, according to the New Harvard Dictionary of Music, page 548, note when placed on the staff is an indication of pitch. And if we go with their definition, then that is a specific frequency that they are referring to. In usage, in common usage, however, that is going to depend somewhat on the context. And that might be the big takeaway from this entire discussion, which is it kind of depends on the context as to what those words are really referring to. Last question, I believe. I have a question about voice classification. First, an aside to compliment you on another fine warm-up. Way to go. Thank you. Appreciate that. But I wonder where you commonly see the baritenor second transition occurring. I am not sure if I see this voice as akin to a dramatic tenor with lower than usual bottom of the range or a baritone with some high notes, either dark voiced like Johnny Cash or lighter voiced such as John Rait. Where do your baritenors transition? Does timbre enter into the discussion? Again, I agree with those who like this video. P.S. I cheat on the lowest notes. I'm not sure what you meant by cheating on the lowest notes. I don't really think about cheating in that way, or whatever that could possibly mean. If you are making accommodations to suit your own particular voice on the lower tessitura in that video, that's fine. That's what your voice requires for that video. If you are making a compromise on the tone quality or intonation, then look at that more as an indication of how your voice is operating and ask yourself the question, am I doing something here that is impeding my ability to align the vowels such that I get consistent tone quality, or is this a function of my voice? Answering that question will then tell you just what's going on down there. But cheating, it's all information. And this is a great question. This question, in fact, kind of touches on when I started releasing baritenor videos. One of the first ones that I released was, do baritenors exist? And I got more than a couple comments were like, well, yeah, of course they do. And I was like, let's not be so certain, because it's like that rose by any other name thing. And I think the quote is, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And I suppose that's fair enough for the old baritenor. They would still sound just as lovely. But depending on who you speak to, you'll either be told that the baritenor is a tenor robusto, or they're some type of lyric baritone with an extension. The fact of the matter is that when we start getting so specific about vocal function, then different schools will tell you one thing over another. And who's to say who's right or wrong? If you look at the piano, this is F4. This is considered to be the secondo passaggio tip over point for like the spinto tenors. And the tenor robusto will be on the lower side of this. So they might be as low as an E natural. That E natural can also, however, be the tip over point for the lyric baritones. And so the baritenor registration event, I generally put in this area of the E. These EF areas where I'm going to focus those exercises. That's where I am conceptualizing the secondo passaggio to be. So some schools of thought will say, well, that's a tenor robusto, Jeff. What are you talking about, baritenor? There's no such thing. Another schools will say, well, in our school, that's a lyric baritone. There's no such thing as this other thing. And then even Richard Miller, I need to go back and find. I found one instance where he talks about that vocalist who can't seem to decide whether it's meant to be E or it's F, and they then just have to choose where to arbitrarily have that registration event and train in that capacity. And he also goes on to say that some who would choose to be on the lower side might ultimately find that they don't have the low register support, the timbre and color there to really train in that capacity. And so then they have to go back around and do it differently. Again, the point is that the secondo passaggio tells us an awful lot about how our voice is going to work. But there are other considerations to take into figuring this sort of stuff out. So even if you kind of feel like your secondo passaggio is more on the E side of things than the F side, but you don't really have the kind of robustness and the ease and flexibility, and maybe you don't really enjoy singing those lower pitches that are in the kind of C3 and B2 and B flat 2 area, then maybe you need to look at your registration event practice and how you're using appoggio breath management. Maybe you can increase function around the secondo passaggio a bit more and change the dynamics such that you have greater overall access and you find out a bit more about your voice. Equally, you may still favor that E or that F, but you find that you really don't like singing the G's and the A's, and it no matter how much appoggio breath management you work on and how much your vowel alignment is good and the registration event is really, really smooth, you can't really hear it, but you just don't like it. And you find that as you ease into those C3s, that you find a richness that you just have to really struggle for when you're in that C4 area. Maybe consider looking more into that lower register development and how your voice operates down there. That can tell you a lot about how your voice is working and what kind of sort of repertoire you are best suited for. But in the baritenor videos, I am thinking about that registration event as being around the E4, F4 area. I am generally speaking thinking of the baritenor as I don't want to pigeonhole it this way, but thus far I've thought of it as the lower voiced, kind of leaning in the baritone kind of way with some upper extension is how you might phrase it. But really, baritenor, by just some other words, is how you might think of it. So yeah, that's where I'm placing that, and I do hope that helps. I think that was the last question, and it was. So thank you so very much. I always enjoy these Q&As. Keep the questions coming. And until next time, take really good care of your voice. Enjoy singing. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. I would appreciate it if you would do that. And do check out the all-new jeffrolka.com, where I've got my brand new Breathing for Singing course, which I'm really pleased about. And hopefully we will see you again. Thank you so much. Bye.